Welcome to Fluent Career English. Today we are going to practice an important skill for professional communication. Our topic today is how to handle difficult situations at work using professional English. This lesson is designed for A2, B1 English learners who want to improve their workplace communication and speak more confidently in professional situations. Difficult situations happen in every workplace. Sometimes a project becomes stressful. Sometimes there are disagreements between colleagues. Sometimes a client has a complaint or a problem needs to be solved quickly. In those moments, the way you communicate is extremely important. Professionals who stay calm, communicate clearly, and focus on solutions usually succeed in difficult situations. In this lesson, you will learn how to explain problems professionally, suggest solutions, and communicate calmly when challenges appear at work. You will also practice realistic workplace conversations, useful vocabulary, and speaking exercises. When you see the word repeat, speak the sentence out loud so you can practice your fluency. Let's begin with a simple workplace conversation. Sophia, have you ever experienced a difficult situation at work?
Yes, I have experienced several challenging situations.
Can you describe one example?
In one project, our team faced a tight deadline and several unexpected problems.
That sounds stressful.
Yes, however, we stayed calm and focused on solving the problems together.
Excellent. Now let's practice describing a difficult situation. Recently, our team experienced a challenging situation during an important project. Recently, our team experienced a challenging situation during an important project. The deadline was approaching quickly and several problems appeared unexpectedly. The deadline was approaching quickly and several problems appeared unexpectedly. However, our team stayed focused and worked together to find solutions. However, our team stayed focused and worked together to find solutions. Excellent speaking practice. Now let's learn an important professional skill, explaining a problem clearly. When a problem happens at work, professionals usually explain the situation calmly and clearly. Let's practice. I believe we may have a small issue with the project timeline. I believe we may have a small issue with the project timeline. The current schedule may require some adjustments because several tasks are taking longer than expected. The current schedule may require some adjustments because several tasks are taking longer than expected. Therefore, I would like to discuss possible solutions with the team. Therefore, I would like to discuss possible solutions with the team. Excellent. Now let's listen to another workplace conversation. Sophia, imagine that a client reports a problem with a project. How would you respond?
First, I would listen carefully to understand the situation.
That is a very good approach.
Then I would explain that our team will review the problem and find a solution.
Excellent. Let's practice that response. Thank you for bringing this issue to our attention. Thank you for bringing this issue to our attention. Our team will review the situation carefully and work to resolve the problem. Our team will review the situation carefully and work to resolve the problem. We appreciate your patience while we find the best solution. We appreciate your patience while we find the best solution. Excellent speaking practice. Now let's learn some useful vocabulary for handling difficult situations at work. Challenge. A challenge is a difficult task or problem. Our team faced several challenges during the project. Our team faced several challenges during the project. Solution. A solution is a way to solve a problem. Our goal is to find the best solution for the situation. Our goal is to find the best solution for the situation. Communication. Communication means sharing information clearly with others. Clear communication helps teams solve problems effectively. Clear communication helps teams solve problems effectively. Excellent. Now let's practice another realistic workplace scenario. Sophia, imagine two team members disagree about how to complete a task. What should happen next?
The team should discuss the problem calmly and listen to different ideas.
That is a professional approach.
When people listen to each other, they often find better solutions.
Excellent explanation. Let's practice expressing that idea. When disagreements happen, it is important to stay calm and listen carefully. When disagreements happen, it is important to stay calm and listen carefully. Different perspectives can help teams find better solutions. Different perspectives can help teams find better solutions. Therefore, respectful communication is essential in professional environments. Therefore, respectful communication is essential in professional environments. Excellent. Now it is your turn to practice speaking. Think about a difficult situation you experienced at work or school. Describe the situation and explain how you handled it. You can start like this. Recently, I experienced a challenging situation at work that required careful communication. Recently, I experienced a challenging situation at work that required careful communication. My team discussed the problem and worked together to find a solution. My team discussed the problem and worked together to find a solution. Because we communicated clearly, the situation was resolved successfully. Because we communicated clearly, the situation was resolved successfully. Excellent. Now let's discuss a common mistake when dealing with difficult situations. Sometimes people react emotionally instead of communicating professionally. For example, someone might say this: "This problem is terrible and everything is going wrong." This response sounds negative and unprofessional. A better response focuses on solutions. "This situation is challenging. However, I believe we can find a solution together." This situation is challenging. However, I believe we can find a solution together. Let's review the problem carefully and discuss possible improvements. Let's review the problem carefully and discuss possible improvements. Excellent speaking practice. Now let's practice a shadowing round. Listen carefully and repeat the sentences naturally. When challenges appear at work, I try to stay calm and focus on solutions. When challenges appear at work, I try to stay calm and focus on solutions.
Clear communication helps teams resolve difficult situations effectively. Clear communication helps teams resolve difficult situations effectively.
For example, discussing problems openly can help teams identify better solutions. For example, discussing problems openly can help teams identify better solutions.
Therefore, professional communication is essential during challenging situations. Therefore, professional communication is essential during challenging situations.
Excellent. Now let's continue with another conversation. Sophia, what is the most important skill when handling difficult situations at work?
I believe the most important skill is communication.
Why do you think communication is so important?
Because clear communication helps people understand problems and work together to solve them.
Excellent explanation. Let's practice expressing that idea. Communication is one of the most important skills for handling difficult situations at work. Communication is one of the most important skills for handling difficult situations at work. When people communicate clearly, problems become easier to solve. When people communicate clearly, problems become easier to solve. Therefore, strong communication skills help teams succeed during challenges. Therefore, strong communication skills help teams succeed during challenges. Excellent. Let's continue learning how to handle difficult situations at work using professional English. In this part of the lesson, we will practice realistic workplace scenarios such as handling disagreements, managing pressure, and responding to mistakes professionally. In professional environments, disagreements sometimes happen between colleagues. However, successful teams know how to communicate respectfully and focus on solutions. Let's begin with a workplace scenario. Sophia, imagine you and a colleague disagree about how to complete a task. What would you say?
I would try to discuss the situation calmly and understand the other person's perspective.
That is a professional approach.
I believe listening carefully helps people find better solutions together.
Excellent explanation. Now let's practice expressing this idea clearly. I understand your perspective, and I would like to discuss possible solutions together. I understand your perspective, and I would like to discuss possible solutions together. Perhaps we can review both ideas and decide which option works best. Perhaps we can review both ideas and decide which option works best. Because collaboration is important, I believe we can find a solution that benefits the team. Because collaboration is important, I believe we can find a solution that benefits the team. Excellent speaking practice. Now let's practice another situation. Sometimes a project does not go according to plan. When this happens, professionals focus on solutions instead of blame. Let's listen to a conversation. Sophia, imagine a project deadline is approaching, but the work is not finished. How would you explain the situation to your manager?
I would explain the situation honestly and suggest possible solutions.
That is the right approach.
I would also explain what steps the team is taking to complete the work.
Excellent. Let's practice that response. I would like to update you on the project progress. I would like to update you on the project progress. We encountered a challenge that has affected the timeline. We encountered a challenge that has affected the timeline. However, our team is working on a solution and adjusting the schedule. However, our team is working on a solution and adjusting the schedule. Excellent. Now let's talk about another difficult situation, handling mistakes. Everyone makes mistakes at work. What matters most is how professionals respond to those mistakes. Let's listen to another conversation. Sophia, imagine you made a mistake in a report. How would you communicate this to your manager?
I would explain the situation clearly and take responsibility.
That is very professional.
I would also explain how I plan to correct the mistake.
Excellent. Let's practice expressing that idea. I would like to discuss a small mistake I noticed in the report. I would like to discuss a small mistake I noticed in the report. I take responsibility for the issue, and I am currently correcting it. I take responsibility for the issue, and I am currently correcting it. I will review the report carefully to ensure everything is accurate. I will review the report carefully to ensure everything is accurate. Excellent speaking practice. Now let's learn some useful vocabulary related to difficult situations at work. Conflict. Conflict means disagreement between people. When conflict appears, communication helps teams find solutions. When conflict appears, communication helps teams find solutions. Resolution. Resolution means solving a problem. Our goal is to reach a resolution that benefits everyone. Our goal is to reach a resolution that benefits everyone. Responsibility. Responsibility means accepting ownership of a task or action. Taking responsibility shows professionalism and integrity. Taking responsibility shows professionalism and integrity. Excellent. Now let's practice another realistic scenario. Sophia, imagine a client is unhappy with a service your team provided. How would you respond?
First, I would listen carefully to understand the client's concern.
That is important.
Then I would apologize for the inconvenience and explain that our team will review the issue.
Excellent. Let's practice that response. Thank you for sharing your concern with us. Thank you for sharing your concern with us. We apologize for the inconvenience and appreciate your feedback. We apologize for the inconvenience and appreciate your feedback. Our team will review the situation and work to resolve the issue quickly. Our team will review the situation and work to resolve the issue quickly. Excellent speaking practice. Now let's discuss another common mistake when handling difficult situations. Sometimes people react emotionally instead of communicating professionally. For example, someone might say this: "This problem is not my fault." This response can create more conflict. A better response focuses on teamwork and solutions. Let's review the situation together and find the best solution. Let's review the situation together and find the best solution. I believe we can work together to resolve this issue. I believe we can work together to resolve this issue. Excellent. Now let's practice a shadowing round. Listen carefully and repeat the sentences naturally. When difficult situations happen at work, I try to stay calm and communicate clearly. When difficult situations happen at work, I try to stay calm and communicate clearly.
Listening carefully helps teams understand problems more effectively. Listening carefully helps teams understand problems more effectively.
Discussing solutions together can help teams resolve conflicts successfully. Discussing solutions together can help teams resolve conflicts successfully.
Therefore, professional communication is essential during challenging situations. Therefore, professional communication is essential during challenging situations.
Excellent speaking practice. Now let's continue with another conversation. Sophia, why is it important to remain calm during difficult situations at work?
Because calm communication helps people think clearly and find solutions.
That is correct.
If people react emotionally, it can make the situation more complicated.
Excellent explanation. Let's practice expressing that idea. Staying calm helps professionals handle difficult situations more effectively. Staying calm helps professionals handle difficult situations more effectively. Clear communication allows teams to understand problems and find solutions. Clear communication allows teams to understand problems and find solutions. Therefore, professionalism is essential during workplace challenges. Therefore, professionalism is essential during workplace challenges. Excellent. In this final section, we will practice complete conversations about handling difficult situations at work. You will learn how to explain problems clearly, suggest solutions professionally, and communicate calmly even during stressful situations. In many workplaces, professionals often need to explain problems and propose solutions during meetings. Being able to speak clearly and respectfully helps teams work together more effectively. Let's begin with a realistic workplace conversation. Sophia, imagine your team is working on an important project and suddenly a problem appears. How would you start the conversation with your team?
I would begin by explaining the situation clearly.
That is a good approach.
Then I would suggest discussing possible solutions together.
Excellent. Let's practice expressing that idea. I would like to discuss a challenge we are currently facing in the project. I would like to discuss a challenge we are currently facing in the project. One part of the project is taking longer than expected. One part of the project is taking longer than expected. Therefore, I think we should review our plan and discuss possible solutions. Therefore, I think we should review our plan and discuss possible solutions. Excellent speaking practice. Now let's practice another scenario. Sometimes difficult situations happen because of misunderstandings between colleagues. Sophia, imagine a colleague misunderstood an instruction and completed a task incorrectly. How would you discuss this situation professionally?
I would explain the misunderstanding calmly and focus on correcting the problem.
That is a professional response.
I would also suggest how we can avoid similar misunderstandings in the future.
Excellent. Let's practice expressing that idea. I believe there may have been a misunderstanding regarding the task instructions. I believe there may have been a misunderstanding regarding the task instructions. Let's review the details together so we can correct the issue. Let's review the details together so we can correct the issue. This will help us avoid similar situations in the future. This will help us avoid similar situations in the future. Excellent. Now let's practice another common workplace situation. Sometimes projects become stressful because deadlines are approaching quickly. Sophia, how would you encourage your team during a stressful project?
I would remind the team to stay calm and focus on completing tasks step by step.
That is excellent leadership.
I would also encourage open communication so everyone understands the priorities.
Excellent explanation. Let's practice expressing that idea. I understand that the deadline is approaching, however, we can complete the work if we stay organized. I understand that the deadline is approaching, however, we can complete the work if we stay organized. Let's focus on our priorities and support each other during this project. Let's focus on our priorities and support each other during this project. Clear communication will help us complete the work successfully. Clear communication will help us complete the work successfully. Excellent speaking practice. Now let's discuss another professional skill, suggesting solutions. When problems appear, professionals often suggest improvements calmly and respectfully. Let's listen to another conversation. Sophia, imagine a project process is causing delays. What would you say during a meeting?
I would explain the issue and suggest a possible improvement.
That is a very effective strategy.
I would also ask the team for their ideas.
Excellent. Let's practice expressing that suggestion. I believe we could improve this process by adjusting our project schedule. I believe we could improve this process by adjusting our project schedule. This change may help our team complete tasks more efficiently. This change may help our team complete tasks more efficiently. I would also appreciate hearing the team's ideas about this improvement. I would also appreciate hearing the team's ideas about this improvement. Excellent. Now let's discuss another common mistake when dealing with difficult situations. Some people focus only on problems without suggesting solutions. For example, someone might say this: "This project is very difficult and everything is delayed." This statement explains the problem but does not offer a solution. A better response focuses on improvement. "This project is challenging. However, I believe we can adjust our schedule to stay on track." "This project is challenging. However, I believe we can adjust our schedule to stay on track." Let's review the tasks together and identify possible improvements. Let's review the tasks together and identify possible improvements. Excellent speaking practice. Now let's practice a longer shadowing round. Listen carefully and repeat the sentences naturally. When challenges appear at work, I try to remain calm and focus on solutions. When challenges appear at work, I try to remain calm and focus on solutions.
Clear communication helps teams understand problems and find better solutions. Clear communication helps teams understand problems and find better solutions.
For example, discussing challenges openly can help teams improve their processes. For example, discussing challenges openly can help teams improve their processes.
Therefore, professional communication is essential during difficult situations. Therefore, professional communication is essential during difficult situations.
Excellent speaking practice. Now let's have one final workplace conversation. Sophia, why do you think handling difficult situations professionally is important?
Because it helps teams maintain trust and solve problems effectively.
That is correct.
When people communicate respectfully, they can find solutions more easily.
Excellent explanation. Let's practice expressing that idea. Handling difficult situations professionally helps teams build trust. Handling difficult situations professionally helps teams build trust. Clear communication allows teams to solve problems more effectively. Clear communication allows teams to solve problems more effectively. Therefore, professionalism is essential in every workplace. Therefore, professionalism is essential in every workplace. Excellent. Now it is time for the final speaking challenge. Imagine you are working on a project and a problem appears. Your manager asks you how you will handle the situation. Listen to this example answer. If a difficult situation appears during a project, I would first explain the problem clearly. If a difficult situation appears during a project, I would first explain the problem clearly. Then I would discuss possible solutions with my team. Then I would discuss possible solutions with my team. Because collaboration helps teams solve problems, I would encourage open communication. Because collaboration helps teams solve problems, I would encourage open communication. Finally, I would focus on completing the project successfully. Finally, I would focus on completing the project successfully. Now it is your turn. Think about a difficult situation you experienced at work or school. Explain how you handled the problem and what solution you suggested. Take a moment and say your answer out loud. Excellent work. Today you practiced explaining problems, suggesting solutions, and communicating professionally during difficult workplace situations. These communication skills are extremely valuable for meetings, teamwork, and leadership. The more you practice these conversations, the more confident you will become when speaking English in professional environments. Thank you for learning with us on Fluent Career English. Keep practicing, keep improving, and keep building your confidence in English for your career.